matplotlib is another exciting third-party module that we can use for visualizations. And it's a very simple to use. We do have to do pip install matplotlib to install it, as it's a third-party feature. It's not built in, a third-party library. And it has versatile plots, line, bar, scatter, histogram, etc. We see a line chart over here as an example, and the only code that was required to generate that chart was this, 10 lines of code. It's not too complex. We have two lists, an X and a Y list, and we import matplotlib and a component of matplotlib, pyplot, as PLT. So that's just giving it a name, and then our lists, and then we say plot X and Y, plot those two lists. So our X and Y coordinates on our chart. We give it a title, an X label, and a Y label. So X axis, Y axis, title. And then we do plt.show. So PLT, because we're calling it that. That's a common thing to do with matplotlib as PLT. And plt.show will actually show that chart. We can customize a lot of this. It can integrate well with libraries like pandas or NumPy to integrate more advanced data visualization. It has support for interactive figures. I could spend 10 hours alone talking about matplotlib. I mean, at least several hours. So we only get to spend a few minutes, but the goal here is to introduce you to it, pique your interest, and make you aware of what this library is and show you some examples to equip you to be able to use it if you so desire. So here's a few examples. Plot, that's just a line plot. Scatter plot, bar chart, and .savefig. Then we can input the name of the file here to save the figure. And I want to show you a little extra something at the end about pip install, how in our IDE, when we do pip install, it doesn't install things for the whole computer. So I want to make a note there to remind myself to show you that at the end. But let's look at a few examples of the matplotlib library. So I have a chart.py and then some examples.py. So we're just going to move pretty quick here and show you the power of matplotlib. Let's copy a simple line chart over into chart.py and run the file. And there we go. And this whole window is a component of matplotlib. It uses some other libraries to visualize our data for us. There's a few tools here at the bottom. We could save the figure directly from here if we wanted. And some customizable components of that. We can reset. But that's our line chart. Pretty simple. I wanted to show you as well if we do plt.grid with our line chart. So I'm uncommenting this line, just .grid before we do the .show. That shows our line chart. Then we hit run. We enable grid lines, so that could be interesting. And then if we want to save the figure, plt.savefig, and then the location we want it to be saved at as, and the name here at the end. So I'm just saving it in the same directory. Let's run it, and we'll see it should pop up over here. There's our file, and there's my figure that popped up. So we should be able to open that. There it is, myfigure.png. So you could see some interesting use cases. We can change the DPI here. See, it's not super high resolution. Let's try that. I believe it is DPI. Let's try that. And then if we look at our saved figure, yeah, you see how it's bigger, high resolution. So we can change the DPI of our figures. And there's some other settings. Again, I can't go into everything with what I hope to accomplish by demonstrating this library with you, but we could change that. So some use cases: save fig, show will actually show the graph. Make sure we do save fig before we do show if we want to save it. You could see some use cases where we're plotting a lot of data, and then we can just save a bunch of figures and examine them later. We can add grid lines with grid. So that's a simple line chart. And this examples.py file, I'm going to include this as a resource in this lecture video. So you can just copy any of these different charts that you want to look at. Let's look at a bar chart. And you could modify them as you see fit. So let's run our bar chart. Pretty similar, except we're doing plt.bar and adding a few variables here that we've defined. Categories and values for the categories. A, B, C, D. 4718. So that's a bar chart. Let's look at a scatter plot. This is a cool library. I love this visualization stuff. You could use things like this for data science. Very useful. There's our scatter plot. And I also have a pie chart. Let's run that. There's our pie chart. So we see we have some nice visualizations here. Let's do another interactive one. And this one, we would have to pip install NumPy as well. And as I said, matplotlib can be combined with some libraries like NumPy and Pandas for advanced plotting. This is using the func animation from matplotlib. So let's look at this and run it. There we go. It's actually animating that sine wave. So quite interesting stuff. Again, this examples.py is going to be attached as a resource to this lecture. Feel free to download it, play around with all these different types of charts. There's much more to matplotlib than that, but very useful plotting library for Python that we can use for data science or other applications. Oh, and the last thing, for pip install, when we're installing these packages within our IDE, it installs it in what's called a virtual environment. And so that means that the packages in that virtual environment are isolated to that space. It's an isolated space where we don't have to worry about the packages we're installing interfering with other packages on our system. We can just install it locally within our environment in our IDE. So if we were to go to our terminal here or command prompt on Windows, I have matplotlib installed, obviously, in my IDE virtual environment because things are running. But if I show where we're at, see, I'm in the same directory here, this Python Essentials Udemy matplotlib folder. And what if I try to run my chart.py? Let's save that. Make sure it's saved. If I try to run that, we don't find the matplotlib module because it's not installed on my system. It's only installed in the IDE's environment of Python. We haven't learned much about virtual environments. We may throw that in here later at some point in the course. But if we want to use that, we'd have to install matplotlib, and then we could use it. And I imagine you may have run into this potentially already. If you haven't, you probably will. So I wanted to take the time to explain that to you. So now we should be able to run. Actually, what's our Python version? 3.11. So let's use pip 3.11. Let's try that. Whoops. There we go. It's thinking about it. First time I'm running it. There we go. So you see, we had to install pip on our system with the global Python interpreter environment in order to run that. Whereas in our IDE, it installs things usually with PyCharm or VS Code within a local interpreter.